Hello, today I will read you a story by Amelia, which is called Just That. My parents tripled my rent to support my unemployed brother and his pregnant blogger wife, who live in their house for free. This is your help to the family, they said, as if I was supposed to feel proud and noble for my sacrifice. So I moved out without giving my new address, leaving a note. Good luck. And before we continue, write in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Enjoy. Well, here we go. My name is Amelia. I am 30 years old. Right now I am sitting in an apartment that once, 8 years ago, was just an empty space on my parents' property, but has since become something more, a home, a refuge, a place of strength and peace, where every little thing was chosen and installed by my hands and at my expense, where every stain on the wall or fold in the curtains had its own story. Sometimes things really do work out strangely. You live, you do everything right, you follow a straight line, the path you've set for yourself, and then one decision, and everything collapses like a house of cards. When I graduated from college, everything seemed simple and clear-cut: a full scholarship, a prestigious degree in pharmaceutical sciences, the prospect of building a career in a reputable company, financial independence, finally. My parents were still living in their cozy 2-story house on the other side of town, and the apartment I now live in was empty. "Amelia, you can live there," my mother said. "But you'll have to pay us $800 a month." It sounded strange, not that I expected everything to come to me for free, no, but still, this was my family. I, a girl who had been working part-time in the evenings after school since she was 16 so as not to have to ask my parents for clothes and movies, I, whom they had taught since childhood to count every penny, suddenly found myself simply a tenant in their eyes. And my brother Antonio? He didn't work at all then. He lived as he wanted, enjoying his student years without a single attempt to find a part-time job, just consuming everything his parents were ready to give him. But $800 was really cheap for that area. And I said yes. I got a job at a pharmaceutical company, moved in and started living alone, for the first time for real. Every month, without missing a single payment, I transferred money to my mother's card, without reminders or delays. 8 years, and not a single overdue payment. But the apartment I moved into then was far from cozy. It was dreary, with peeling walls, old, awkward furniture, a stove that could start a fire at any moment, and a refrigerator that seemed to be on its last legs. So I got down to business. I bought a sofa, chose a new TV, brought furniture to the bedroom, replaced the washing machine, repainted the walls, hung curtains, bought dishes, cozy blankets, rugs, books, paintings, everything that fills the space with life. Each time I consulted with my mother, the respect that I could not help but show. "Mom, what if I buy a new table for the living room?" "Sure, darling. Just make sure everything matches," she answered. The thousands of dollars that I invested in this place were my money, honestly earned, saved with care and labor, but still, I always wanted my parents to be pleased, to feel, I care. And all this time I saved. I knew that one day I would have to leave, not because I was unhappy here, but because a person should have something of his own. A home. His own. With keys that never need to be returned, with doors behind which no one will remind, this is still our apartment. At every family dinner, when I came to them, everything was remembered. "How are things in our apartment?" my parents would ask, with that special emphasis on the word "our," as if I were a lodger who was simply given temporary shelter. Not your, not even just, in the apartment, precisely ours. And Antonio, meanwhile, remained in the same childhood bedroom in which he grew up. He is 28, he sometimes worked part-time, but nothing serious. And my parents, they never pushed him, did not demand responsibility. For them he was that very boy to whom everything is forgiven. 2 years ago, everything changed. Antonio married a girl named Bianca. I will not say that she is bad. It's just, her world is Instagram. She's a blogger, she says, doing beauty reviews, makeup tutorials, avocado toast, and morning yoga. But honestly, she's never really worked. And now they all live in the house together, my parents, Antonio, Bianca, and her belly, because, yes, she's pregnant now. And since then, our family dinners have never been the same. The first time I went to dinner after their wedding, Bianca had completely taken over, and it wasn't that I was shocked, but rather taken aback by the confidence with which she walked into a house that wasn't hers, but which she seemed to already consider her stage, her studio, her backdrop for the endless stream of content she was broadcasting to the world, as if we were all members of her film crew, extras in her personal soap opera, and even my parents, in this strange production, played obedient servants, ready to carry out her every instruction without question or doubt, just so long as her creative process was not disrupted. She would boss my mother around, telling her where to put the napkins and how to slice the lemons for the water, telling my father to wait before taking the first spoonful of soup because she needed to capture the perfect plate in the perfect light, and when she finally had it all ready, not ready to eat, but ready to publish, she would pick up the phone and say loudly, "Everyone stop," and we would magically freeze, utensils in hand, glasses half raised, waiting for her to change the angle, adjust the lighting, and take 20 duplicates of the same shot, as if searching for some magical angle that would suddenly make her breakfast not just food but a work of art. My parents just looked at it with peaceful smiles, as if it was a game they were happily joining, forgetting that before at the table they used to talk about the weather, the news, books, share stories, and now it all came down to the number of views and trending hashtags. I tried to be kind, I really did. That evening I even smiled, kept up the conversation, said that all this was very interesting, that digital culture was real art, but inside me there was an icy lump of irritation that I couldn't swallow. And then there was the sandwich incident, an event so absurd that even now, remembering it, I feel my stomach clench. I came to dinner a little early, as I used to do before, when I could still feel at home in this house. In the kitchen, on the table, there were sandwiches beautifully laid out. I was hungry, and without thinking, I took a bite, just one. At that moment, Bianca walked into the room, her face contorted as if she'd seen me smash her phone or pour a month's worth of her work down the sink. "Are you kidding?" she screamed with such fury that I nearly dropped the food. "That was for my video. I spent 2 hours making it look perfect. I can't post content with a piece cut out of it," she screamed, as if I'd ruined her career. I tried to apologize, to explain that I didn't know it was a prop, that I'd just been hungry and thought it was food that was logically meant to be eaten, not photographed. But she wouldn't listen. She called me selfish, short-sighted, inconsiderate, accusing me of not understanding what it meant to be a content creator, as if it were a profession that required not just a camera but a special blessing from the gods. I left that night without eating, hunched over in shame and humiliation, my eyes wet with tears, cursing my goodwill and my naive attempt to be part of this new, strange family. After that, I kept my distance. I was polite, but that was it. I didn't argue, I didn't comment on her stories, I didn't ask about brands. I just sat at the table, listened to her talk about growing her audience, about engagement, about her plans to become a star as soon as the right brand noticed her, and I just nodded as if all this really concerned me. Meanwhile, the conversation at the table was only about them. Only Bianca. Only Antonio. No one asked me how my company was doing, what was new at work, how I was feeling after a stressful week. I sat with a glass of wine, thinking about the new developments in the lab, the testing schedule, the patients we could help, and I knew that none of those thoughts were of interest to anyone here. One time, when Bianca showed me her latest post, a photo of her breakfast with pastel yellow yogurt and perfectly sliced berries, she explained the hashtags she'd used, the time she'd posted it, why she'd chosen that particular filter, and my father, a man who'd once lectured on engineering, nodded at her as if she'd just unveiled a scientific discovery. "Very clever, Bianca," he'd say, and Antonio would beam, "My wife thought of everything." And me? I kept paying them $800 a month. I kept listening to stories about financial literacy. I kept bringing wine and salads into the house, showing up for family dinners even when my soul wanted to stay home, wrap myself in a blanket and forget that I was part of this strange performance. I told myself, this is temporary, they will find a job, they will move, everything will work out. But 3 weeks ago, everything changed. It was a normal Saturday morning, I had just finished my coffee, was getting ready to do laundry, maybe then go grocery shopping. And suddenly the front door opened. No ringing, no knocking, just opened. I flinched, my heart started beating faster. For a second, I thought it was a break-in. I was standing in the kitchen, in a t-shirt and old shorts, and I heard the key turn in the lock. My heart began to beat faster until I heard her voice, so familiar, slightly husky, with that note of authority that came out whenever she felt it necessary to make a remark or put things in their place, as she understood it. "Amelia, are you home?" she asked, walking deeper into the apartment, as if she were still in her own space, in that sphere of influence where her word is law and my refusal is perceived as impudence. I walked out of the kitchen, trying not to show my irritation, but not hiding my surprise, because, frankly, nothing about her appearance was normal. Not a doorbell, not a warning, just a turn of the key in the lock, and here she was standing in the middle of my living room, like an inspector coming to assess the damage. She looked around the room silently, moving her gaze from one piece of furniture to another, as if recording in her memory every purchase, every decorative element, every pillow I had chosen with a care with which she had never chosen anything in her own life. There was that look on her face that I knew so well, not overt criticism, no, something more subtle, more caustic, a look of silent disapproval, as if everything she saw was either inappropriate, or not good enough, or completely alien to her sense of the order of things. "Mom, you scared me. Why didn't you knock?" I asked, trying to sound calm but not hiding the cold note in my voice. She didn't seem to hear me. Or pretended not to. Instead of answering, she just continued to look around the room, as if I wasn't standing there, as if I were part of the decor, an insignificant addition to the interior. I felt an unpleasant feeling growing inside me, as if everything I had achieved, everything I had built with my own hands, was about to be called into question, devalued, erased. "We need to talk," she finally said, looking as if I was about to be reprimanded. Definitively. I invited her to sit down, pointing to the sofa that I had chosen, bought, unpacked, and assembled myself. I offered her coffee, still hoping to remain polite, although a premonition of disaster was already pulsating inside. "No, I don't have time for this. This is serious." She waved it off and sat down without waiting for my consent, as if I had invited her into someone else's apartment. "Amelia, everything is changing here. Bianca is pregnant," she began with an intonation, as if she were telling me something new. I nodded, trying not to betray the irony. Yes, I already knew. They announced it at dinner with the kind of pathos that is usually reserved for political manifestos or competition victories. Bianca paused, cleared her throat, fixed her hair and said with feigned seriousness, "I would like to officially announce that I am pregnant," as if she were giving an award speech. My parents clapped, my mother sobbed, and I simply congratulated, restrained, sincere, but without enthusiasm. Even then, I felt that there was more to this than just news. My mother looked at me intently. "Then you understand that everything is different now. Bianca needs support. She needs money, for doctors, for the child, for herself. It is important." I looked at her silently, not believing what I was hearing. Shouldn't Antonio provide for his pregnant wife? Isn't it his responsibility? "That's how marriage works," I said quietly, almost without hoping for a clear answer. My mother's face changed. Her lips pressed together, her eyes darkened. "Antonio is still searching for himself. He is trying out different options. And Bianca? Bianca is building something important. She will be an influential person. She is working for her future," she said with that same confidence that always drove me crazy, because there was nothing behind it except blind faith and a desire to see what is not there. I wanted to laugh. But I held it in. Antonio had been searching for himself since he first tried college and dropped out after 3 semesters. He'd been a barista, dabbling in cryptocurrency, registering a sole proprietorship for a marketing scheme, creating podcasts, selling used electronics. Not a single project had survived the month. "Mom, what does this have to do with me?" I asked, my palms growing hotter with each passing second, my insides clenching with anger and resentment. And then she said it. Simple, clear, calm, as if she were talking about adjusting a prescription. "Starting next month, your rent is going to go up. Instead of $800, you'll be paying $2,400. I froze. $2,400. 3 times as much. It wasn't just a new number, it was a statement, an ultimatum, a slap in the face. I tried to find the words. This is insane. This is more than the market rate. The apartments in this area, even the great ones, are 1,500, 1,800 max, I breathed out. She didn't blink. This isn't just rent. This is family support. Helping my brother. I could feel my cheeks burning. I'm not paying $2,400 a month. That's ridiculous. She shrugged. Then you need to move out. We'll find other tenants. People who understand the value of housing. People who don't argue with their own families. And that was when I knew it was the end. I sat on the couch long after she left, staring at the wall, trying to breathe evenly, holding back the dull, bursting pain inside. Then I stood up, walked over to the table, opened my laptop, and, gritting my teeth, began looking for apartments. I had enough savings to afford the first month's rent and a deposit for almost any apartment I could seriously consider, and even though this money was part of my plan, that same carefully and patiently saved amount that was once supposed to be the first step towards a real house, my own, bought with my own money and registered in my name, I understood that now I would have to reconsider my priorities, wait a little, work a little longer, save a little more, but most importantly, leave, and finally do it for good. By the evening of the same day, I had already found 3 suitable options, which I decided to look at as soon as possible. It was Saturday morning, followed by Sunday, which meant I had some time before the start of the work week, and I used it as efficiently as possible. I called all the landlords, made appointments, paid attention to details, checked maps and reviews. I have always been methodical. I was not good at acting on a whim, especially when it came to a place where I would sleep, wake up, cook and put myself back together. The second apartment I looked at was perfect, so perfect that for a second I wondered if maybe it was all too easy. It was in the same area, but surprisingly even closer to my work, which cut down on the morning commute and saved me from having to spend extra money on gas. The apartment was bare, there was not a chair, not a closet, not a stove, but it didn't matter, everything I had used for the past 8 years belonged to me. I bought the sofa, the TV, the dishes, the appliances, the bed, the dining table, even the rug in the hallway and the pictures on the walls. It was all mine. The rent was $1,600 a month, twice what I had been paying my parents but still $800 less than the outrageous amount they were trying to charge me, and, most importantly, it was real rent, market rent, transparent rent, no sense of moral obligation, no mocking, this is your contribution to the family, wording. Here I was signing a contract with my name, my terms, my dates. I filled out an application right there, without delay, and put down a deposit right away, determinedly, like someone who was not going to put off her freedom for later. The landlord, a nice older man in a plaid shirt, said that if all went well, I could move in on Wednesday. On Tuesday morning I got a call that my application had been approved. I took the day off from work and started packing. It was a strange feeling, not just packing but taking inventory of my life, where every fork, every mug, every frame on the wall reminded me how long ago I had stepped out of the role of guest in that apartment and how deeply rooted I had become, becoming its soul. Everything I took with me belonged to me. Except for one thing, the old wooden table that had been there since before I moved in, heavy, with cracks on the surface, with bent legs and a creaking sound that I always heard when I passed by. I left it. On it I left a note, good luck. I didn't tell my parents I was moving that day. I just sent my mom a quick text, I've moved out. Thanks for everything. I could see it was red, a little red tick letting me know she received it and seen it, but there was no response. The day passed in silence. The second day, too. And I naively wondered if it really was that easy. Maybe they just accepted it, let it go, like adults, whatever. I was unpacking, rearranging the furniture, washing the curtains, putting the books back on the shelves, putting the cups in the closet, trying to make the new home my own, to get to know the space, to let the warmth in. And then Friday came. And my phone started ringing non-stop. First Mom, then Dad, then Antonio, over and over, in a circle. At first I ignored the calls, sending them to voicemail, not ready to listen to accusations or hysteria. But when my mother called for the third time in a row, I picked up. Her voice was sharp, filled with anger and panic. "Amelia, what the hell did you do?" she almost screamed. I tried to sound calm. "I moved out. Like you said. Remember? Do you need me to remind you?" Her voice shook. "You took everything. The apartment is empty." "I took my things." "The things I bought with my own money," I answered, knowing that she understood perfectly well. "We already found a tenant." "We promised him a furnished apartment," she protested. "Then maybe you should have talked to me first," I said, and I heard her breathing become ragged on the other end of the line. "Give me the furniture back now, or I'll call a lawyer," she screamed, as if that would still work. I laughed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, tiredly. "Call a lawyer. But think carefully. Do you want to explain why you took money from me for 8 years without a lease? Do you think the tax office won't be interested in this?" There was a deathly silence on the other end. Then her voice became cold, deeply hurt. "You are no longer our daughter." "If that's what you think," I answered and hung up. And then everything really got worse before it got better. Already at night, I started receiving messages from Antonio and Bianca, long, full of pathos, accusations, reproaches. Antonio wrote that I was selfish, that I was abandoning the family in a difficult moment. Bianca sent voice messages where her voice trembled with rage. She called me greedy, cold, heartless, said that I was jealous of her pregnancy, her success as an influencer. Success: 9,000 followers and $50 a month for posts with toothpaste and lunchboxes. I didn't respond to any of these messages. I just blocked all their numbers. Blocked them on Instagram, on Facebook, anywhere they could reach me. I was done with this drama. The next few weeks were truly peaceful, so unexpectedly and pleasantly quiet that at times I caught myself thinking as if I was expecting a catch, as if at any moment this silence would be followed by a new explosion of drama, screaming, accusations, endless text messages. But no, everything was calm, stable, measured. I settled into my new apartment, each day feeling more and more in my place, among my things, in a space where no one encroached on my opinion, did not question my decisions, did not invade my personal space under the guise of care or familial duty. I got used to the new routine, to the morning light filtering through the white curtains, to the quiet in the evenings when I could just sit with a book or turn on music without fear that someone would turn the TV on full blast or start filming another vlog in the background of my bedroom. It was an amazing feeling to come home and know that no one would remind me that this was not mine, that I was just a guest or a temporary tenant who was being tolerated until the room was needed for someone more in need. For the first time in 8 years, I felt like I actually had a home, even if I didn't own it, even if I had to pay rent, but with a voice, with respect, with independence. Work was also going well. My boss started talking seriously about promoting me to senior analyst, and that meant not just the respect of my colleagues, but also a steady increase in income, the ability to save more, to plan for the years ahead. I worked hard, took on extra shifts, helped colleagues with their projects, and didn't complain because I knew that now I was building my own life, and no one would take that foundation away from me. About a month after we moved in, on an ordinary evening when I was out at the corner supermarket to buy groceries, I bumped into Sarah, my cousin, who was always the family chronicler, the bearer of gossip, rumors, and first-hand news. When she saw me, she immediately looked around, as if checking if there was anyone nearby who could overhear our conversation, and whispered, "Your mother told everyone that you stole their furniture." I laughed, not from joy, but from the predictability of the situation. Of course she did. Of course she made me out to be a thief, a villain, someone who had betrayed the family. What else does she say? I asked, not even trying to hide the weariness in my voice. Sarah snorted. That you're selfish and ungrateful. But honestly, Amelia, no one in the family believes her. They all think that demanding that kind of money from you is too much. Everyone thinks they've gone too far, especially because it's all for Antonio. It was strange, nice, but strange, to hear that some of the family had sided with me, that not everyone had decided that I had to sacrifice myself endlessly for those who had never done anything for anyone else. I asked how they were doing. Sarah winced. Not very well. They can't find anyone to rent the apartment at the price they wanted. They've had to lower the price twice, and still no one will take it. And Bianca and your mother are always fighting. I was surprised. About what? About everything. Bianca wants to move into the apartment that's empty now, but your parents won't let her. They're afraid they'll never rent it to anyone. And she thought you'd give her money to settle in with the baby. I felt a slight, barely noticeable satisfaction, not gloating, no, but rather a quiet confidence that I had done the right thing, that I had protected myself from a series of manipulations, from the constant sense of guilt that was so carefully cultivated in us since childhood. And Antonio? I asked. Sarah rolled her eyes. Still not working. Still talking about his great ideas. The latest is a podcast about cryptocurrency. He even bought a microphone, but I don't think he's recorded a single episode yet. 6 months passed. I got a promotion, my salary increased by 15%, and I began saving again for my own place, for a house that would be the final point in this story of addiction, for a place where no one would come without knocking, where I would be the mistress, not in words, but in deeds. My life got better. It became easier for me to breathe. And then one evening, leaving work, I saw a figure standing by my car, hesitantly, slightly hunched over, as if the person was either cold or scared. It was Antonio. He noticed me immediately, and I knew that I couldn't just walk past. Amelia, wait, please, can we go somewhere and talk? Maybe to that coffee shop over there, he said, and his voice was different from before, not self-confident, not condescending, but confused, pleading. I didn't want to, but curiosity got the better of me. We walked to the coffee shop in silence. I ordered a latte, he didn't have anything. When the barista asked, he muttered, I can't afford coffee right now. We sat in a corner. Antonio looked bad, disheveled hair, wrinkled t-shirt, eyes in shadow. He began, Amelia, I need your help. Bianca and I want to move out of Mom and Dad's. We need our own place. Especially now, with a kid. I nodded, slowly, coldly. Then get a job and move. That's what adults do. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. It's not that easy. We have a kid. I can't just work anywhere. I looked at him straight. Antonio, you've never held a job for more than 3 months. This isn't about the kid. This is about you. His face flushed. That's not true. Name one job you've held longer. He was silent. Listen, he began again, I know I've made mistakes. I'm trying to get better. I'm working on a podcast. I think it could be successful. People are interested in crypto. I laughed, but I held back. Do you know how many podcasts like this are out there? What makes you different from the rest? I asked. I have ideas. Really? They're good. Same Antonio. Same dreams. No plan. Why are you telling me all this? What do you want from me? I asked. I need money to move, just a loan, he said with the same easy, almost schoolboy awkwardness with which he always began conversations about his new endeavors, unrealized projects and hypothetical future successes. I'll pay you back everything as soon as the podcast starts making money. I looked at him without turning away and asked, without raising my voice, how much? He cringed, as if he himself knew that the figure sounded absurd. Maybe 10,000. That will cover the first month's rent, a security deposit, some furniture, and, of course, another illusory attempt to start a new life by investing someone else's money in an old habit of never finishing anything. $10,000 in debt that he will never pay back, to finance another of his schemes, another empty dream, another podcast cut short in mid-sentence. No, I said, not giving myself a chance to soften. Please, Amelia, he leaned forward, his voice pleading, and something desperate, almost childish, appeared in his eyes. You're my sister. It's hard for Bianca to live with her mom and dad, they argue all the time, the atmosphere there is terrible, the child needs a stable home. I sighed and, maintaining my firmness, repeated, then get a job, Antonio. Find a real job with a stable salary, like adults do, like I do, like millions of others do. He began to speak louder, his face flushed with irritation. You make good money, you got a promotion, you could help us if you wanted to. People in the coffee shop began to turn around, looking to see who was making a scene, and I, not wanting to be part of this performance, stood up. I'm leaving. Don't mess with me anymore. Amelia, wait. He shouted, but I was already heading for the exit, without looking back, without giving myself a second of doubt. That evening, Sarah called me, again, as always, with the latest news. She told me what had happened since I left. Antonio had come home, furious and hurt, and told everyone that I had refused to help him, that I was ruthless and cold, that I was abandoning my family when they needed me most. Mom, according to Sarah, was furious, telling everyone who would listen that I was heartless, that I had forgotten where I came from, that success had gone to my head. I snorted. What else was new? But Sarah continued, and there was something soft, sincere in her voice. Amelia, I just think you should know, things are really bad there. Bianca and your mom had a big fight yesterday. Bianca threw a plate at the wall, screaming that she would take the child and leave if she was not respected. I chuckled. It seems that this is their problem, not mine. I understand, Sarah said quietly, but Antonio looked really bad today. He was desperate. After the call, I felt a little uneasy. Not so much that I would rush to save my brother, but enough to start asking myself again, as before, am I doing the right thing? I remembered how all these years I watched him go with the flow, how my parents adjusted the whole world to him, how I, on the contrary, fought for every step, for every raise, for every project. No, I thought. I don't have to save him. I am not responsible for his mistakes. He is 30. He has a wife. He has a child. Time to grow up. That was a year ago. After I refused to give him money, Antonio was tossing and turning, trying to find at least one that he could cling to. The cryptocurrency podcast he was fussing over like a baby lasted 6 weeks, a couple of episodes, a bunch of empty promises to subscribers, then silence. Then he tried day trading, with his parents' money, of course. The result, a significant part of their savings disappeared in a volatile market. After that, there was an attempt to get into multi-level marketing, protein shakes, flyers, webinars, 2 months of enthusiasm before everything fizzled out. Bianca continued to run Instagram, but it was becoming increasingly difficult for her to create content, as she called it. The child took up all her time and energy, and complaints about there being no light, that the baby was crying, that everything is not as in the picture, became a regular background. The arguments with her mother became so heated that her father once installed a lock on their bedroom door to get some privacy from the endless bickering. Sarah said they had another blow-up last month when Bianca threw a tantrum because her mother refused to babysit while she went to meet other influencers. Her mother, however, was the first in a long time to be firm. It's not my job to babysit your child. You're living here for free. Sort this out yourself. The irony was not lost on me. The woman who had demanded rent from me for every curtain, for every square meter, for every breath in their apartment, now lived under the same roof with 3 parasites who found even basic household chores humiliating. They had never been able to rent out the apartment I had once lived in at a high price. After several failures, they found someone who agreed to pay $1,200 a month, and only on the condition that it be furnished. Since I had taken all the furniture, my parents had to buy cheap, basic furniture to somehow fulfill their promise. The result was that the rent barely covered the expenses. They barely broke even. Meanwhile, my life went on as calmly and smoothly as before. The new position brought me not only more money, but also tasks that I truly enjoyed. I was involved in challenging research projects, my ideas were taken seriously, and my boss was already privately mentioning that he saw me in an even higher position during the next restructuring of the company. I continued to save money, and on weekends I increasingly looked through real estate websites, choosing not just a place to live, but the very place that could possibly become my first real home. With my salary, savings, and stable job, I will be able to make a decent down payment as early as the spring. Now it seems to me that having your own home is quite achievable, not as a dream that is constantly pushed aside, hiding behind circumstances, not as a fantasy inspired by social networks with their idealized interiors and morning light and a cup of coffee, but as a real, measurable goal that can be reached if you go towards it step by step, firmly, consistently, with a clear understanding that you do not need anyone's approval to earn the right to your own space. I even started dating someone, which was the most unexpected turn of events, as if life had decided to reward me for my endurance, for my years of patience and calm but persistent forward movement. Leonardo is an engineer, thoughtful, calm, with a direct gaze and a warm voice, and we met at a biotech conference, where he approached me after my presentation to ask a question and eventually got chatting and told me about his project. He turned out to be a person who knows how to really listen, not just nodding, waiting for his turn to speak, but really delving into what you say. When I told him about my family, about my parents, about my brother, about the apartment and all these endless demands, at first he was silent for a long time, and then said, "You are responsible for all this, because you are an adult, smart and conscientious. But do not forget, they should be proud of you, and not try to use you as their personal ATM." It's nice to be with someone who sees things clearly, without the fog of family obligations, without the pressure of tradition, without their family game. A few weeks ago, Sarah called me again. I think she's become my personal family news agency, and in a way I was grateful for her, because she was the one I knew what was going on without getting directly involved. "Your brother and Bianca had a big fight," she said right away, without preamble. "Bianca wants to move into your old apartment because your parents haven't been able to find a reliable tenant. But they said no. They need some income, even $1,200 a month. They're tight on money right now. Your dad's even started talking about getting a part-time job." I felt uneasy. My father is 68 years old, and the thought that after decades of toil, he was now forced to think about taking on odd jobs simply because he was supporting 3 adults, one of whom had never held a job for more than a few months, wasn't just sad, it was humiliating. "What did Bianca say?" I asked. Sarah sighed heavily. She said that if they didn't let her into the apartment, she would leave. She would take the baby and leave Antonio. My mother said, "Where would you go? You don't have any money." And she said, "I'll figure it out. Maybe my sisters." I almost felt sorry for Antonio. Almost. But then I remembered, he was 30. He was married. He had a child. And he still lived as if everyone owed him. As if adulthood wasn't for him. "Oh, and Amelia," Sarah added, lowering her voice a little, "your mother asked if I knew your address." I tensed. What did you tell her? That I don't know. But she asked others, too. I think she might try to contact you. Let her try. I'm not interested, I snapped. Sarah was right. A few days later, my mother came to see me at work. I was leaving the building with my laptop in my bag and the upcoming meeting on my mind when I saw her at the door. My first impulse was to turn around and go back inside, to hide behind the office door like you're hiding from the rain, but she had already seen me. "Amelia, we need to talk. Just 5 minutes." I looked at her. She seemed older, not just physically, but internally, tired, tense, her shoulders slumped, as if she carried not only the weight of years but also the weight of disappointment. "Okay." 5 minutes, I said, and walked to the nearest bench. She sat down. I remained standing. "Amelia, I know things have gotten heated, but you're still my daughter." I looked at her, and for a second I remembered how the last time we spoke, she'd said that I was no longer part of the family. "It's funny," I said, "because last time you said I wasn't your daughter." She sighed. "I didn't mean it that way." "Then what do you want, Mom?" I asked, not letting her get away from the point. "I want our family back together. All this fighting, it's never going to do any good. Then talk to Antonio. Tell him to get a job instead of asking me to finance his life. He's trying, Amelia. He's just having a hard time. It's hard for everyone. The difference is that most people don't have parents who've been covering for them for 30 years. She paused. We miss you at family dinners, she finally said. I shook my head. No, Mom. You miss the money I paid for rent and me watching Bianca's show. Be honest, when was the last time you asked me about my job? About my life? When was the last time you were proud of me? She couldn't answer. I continued, I got promoted twice this year. I'm buying a house. I'm happy. And none of you even asked how I was. Because you're too busy with Antonio's latest crisis. Mom nodded. We're proud of you, Amelia. Always have been. I laughed. You have a funny way of showing it. I turned and walked to the car. She called out to me, Amelia, wait. I turned around. When Antonio gets a real job and starts acting like an adult, maybe we'll talk. But until then, I'm not the family ATM anymore. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, silence. No messages, no calls. I know that someone might think that I'm cruel, that I should be indulgent, that I should help my nephew, that family is sacred. But here's the thing, I spent 8 years being the reliable, adult, responsible one, watching my parents indulge Antonio's irresponsibility, covering up his mistakes, excusing his inaction, rewarding him for simply being. I paid rent while he lived rent-free. I invested in someone else's apartment that was never mine. I endured, I listened, I swallowed. Now it's all behind me. Now I have my own life, my own goals, my own future to think about. If that makes me selfish, so be it. Leave a comment on what you think of this story and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and put a like. See you soon.